Good evening, it's Paul, 2 Echo Zero Echo India Juliet. Now, a day or two ago, I noticed someone on the internet say they were going to use amateur radio gear to prank truck drivers. Now, the first thing I want to point out is that that's actually quite illegal to do. It is definitely illegal because this individual is not a licensed amateur. And I subsequently discovered also that the equipment in question that they wanted to use was a 40 channel 477 megahertz UHF CB, which from what I understand are only legal in region 3, such as Australia, New Zealand, that sort of area. However, they seem to be insistent that this piece of equipment was an amateur radio. Certainly isn't. Amateur radios are not channelized in any way, shape or form. However, CB radios are. That's one of the primary differences. Now, this unit is a TTI TCB 550. It is a CB radio operating on the 27 MHz band. This one is in UK mode and it is channelized. So therefore, it is not amateur radio gear. It can be modified for the 10 metre band, but it would remain channelized and it wouldn't be true amateur radio equipment. My CRT SS9900 can be set up either as a channelized piece of equipment, which for all intents and purposes in amateur radio is no good, or can be set up properly as an amateur radio piece of equipment by turning the big knob, and it just turns the frequencies over through the entire 10 metre band. Now this is a QIT KT8900D, my main home 270 rig. Now I've got repeaters programmed into it as memory channels. They're just programmed as memories, not proper channels. They're not programmed in at the factory. However, turning this knob here turns the frequency through constant VFO. Thereby, it is not a CB radio. It is an amateur radio, and you need a license to operate it. It has an output power of 25 watts at full power, and in order to use it, you must be duly licensed. In America, all licenses there allow you to operate at up to 1.5 kilowatts on pretty much nearly every band. I think that includes 2 meters from the get-go. So, and as far as I'm aware, in the American exam there's a lot of questions about safety. The TCB 550 is set at 4 watts at the factory. That cannot be changed. There may be a low power setting in there for certain countries where only 1 watt is allowed, but most cases Citizens band is 4 watts. Now, bring on to something else. And this is a UHF walkie-talkie. This is a Benetton Action 950. It is a PMR 446 radio with 8 channels and half a watt transmitting power. It is channelized. The antenna cannot be taken out of it and replaced unless you're good with a soldering iron, and also it cannot transmit at anything more than half a watt unless again you're skilled with a soldering iron and put power amplifier into there, which would make it illegal. And the only place you could legally use that if you modified it in any way, shape or form is in the United States and most other region 2 countries where the 446 megahertz frequencies is part of the 70 centimetre amateur radio band. So, also this individual decided to say CB and amateur radio are exactly the same in some respects. No, they're not. On CB radio it's pretty much a free-for-all because a lot of countries don't seem to be that heavy in reprimanding anyone who decides they're going to muck about on it. On amateur radio, if you muck about and you get caught, you get your licence revoked. If you muck around on amateur radio frequencies without a licence, you can either be fined or imprisoned or maybe a combination of both. But in any case, your equipment will be confiscated by whoever's responsible for the radio spectrum in your country, be it Ofcom in the UK, the FCC in the United States of America, and the ACMA in Australia, and New Zealand's equivalent, and any other equivalent to those agencies in whichever country you happen to reside in. Those are the main ones I actually know about. So, my suggestion is, just don't look around. Now, I blogged about this on my radio communications blog. This upset the individual to no end, unfortunately, because I even linked to it on my Twitter, and this individual tried to find out my exact location by using APRS.FI, which was a bit fruitless of them. In fact, it was actually more akin to stupidity. So, I'm going to give you some extracts from that post if you haven't already seen it. I've just got to obviously load it up on something. I've not got the Shack computer running, but I do have my phone, which can actually access the log as well. Even though I'm not supposed to be using all my mobile data, but I'm using Wi-Fi. So, I haven't put too much information on. The post in question is called "The Differences Between Amateur Radio and CB Radio." Now I did mention that CB radio is license exempt on the 27 MHz band in 11 meters. And there is also 40 channels or 80 channels on 477 MHz in Australia, New Zealand, and some other regions, countries. I can't remember which ones off the top of my head. And that's limited to 5 watts. And amateur radio requires you taking an exam in order to get the license. I've worked hard to get to the intermediate, and I will be working hard again to get my full license, hopefully by August next year. So, the controls on the CB radio, I've already gone through them. On that TTI TCB 550, there's just a volume control, squelch control, an up and down control, and a lock button, and a button to get to channel 9, which is the emergency channel, although it's never used as an emergency channel, because, let's face it, in this country nobody seems to care less. On my amateur radio equipment, I've got the tuning control, as I said, tunes through the frequencies in the band, although this can go quite a way out of band, so you've got to be careful with these Chinese ones. But they also come with a microphone with a keypad on, much like this. That is for sending DTMF tones when you press the key down like that. It's not connected to the radio because the radio has no antenna connected to it, and I am not messing around replacing finals, just to demonstrate what's going on here. So, if there are no call signs usually involved with CB radio, though if you do want a call sign on 11 meters, there's the Charlie Tango website and Transmission One, both of which I will link to in the YouTube video description. So, but in amateur radio, you get your call sign once you've passed your exam, got the certificate saying you've passed, and registered that pass with the authority of your country that deals with spectrum management. Those again, for the UK is Ofcom, for the United States is the Federal Communications Commission, and for Australia is the ACMA, and the equivalent of those in your country. So, I don't know what they all are off the top of my head. So, the modes used in CB are AM, FM and single sideband. In most countries, not all. AM is allowed in the United States, but FM is not. But we can use all those modes on amateur radio. In the UK it's limited to about 400 watts, I believe Australia is the same, and in the United States it's 1.5 kilowatts, and that's all at the highest license level. But the 1.5 kilowatts in the United States is from the technician, general and extra. They're restricted on frequency and bands rather than transmission power, which is a worry, considering that you do know of all the mischief that Chance Callahan KD0MXN gets up to. Obviously you don't want to let him loose with the 1.5 kilowatts of RF. It's kind of a bad thing. But unfortunately the FCC haven't listened so far. But there's nothing we can do about that right now. But again, if this person does go ahead and misuse the radio spectrum in the way they claim they want to do it, they could get into serious trouble. It doesn't matter whether they're using the Australian UHF CB, 27 megahertz CB, amateur radio, whatever. I haven't said which country this person's in, but I will obviously not disclose too much information about them, because they're obviously not part of the hobby, and they only wanted to suggest this just to wind me up, which actually has not worked. So just bear in mind that if you do mess around with radio gear, you will get caught, you will probably get fined, and your radio will be forfeited. And that's the end of that. The authorities don't take kindly to people mucking around. Have respect for the radio spectrum. Don't abuse it. That's all I'm going to say on that. If you abuse the radio spectrum and even abuse the privileges granted to you as an amateur radio operator, you will get into serious trouble. So don't abuse the radio spectrum. So, CB radio, license free, 4 watts, anyone can use it. Just don't muck around on it, and don't use anything you're not meant to. The UHF CB system in Australia, pretty much the same sort of thing. Again, just don't abuse it and muck around, because people won't take too kindly to that. Amateur radio, if you want to go down that route, get your license and play with radio, but just don't abuse the privileges you have been granted, because you will get into trouble and your license will be revoked. That's all I'm going to say now. So, 73s from Paul to Echo Zero, Echo India Juliet. And I hope to work all the sensible people on the bands real soon.
Don't forget, you can subscribe to this channel and ring the bell if you'd like to be notified about new videos as I upload them. 73 from Paul to Echo Zero, Echo India Juliet. Or 26 Charlie Tango 730 if you catch me on 11 meters and PMR 446.